Is it fake to change your voice? That is the topic of today's video. Now, my answer is actually yes and no, because it really depends on what you mean by your voice. So I'm going to unpack this in all its glory on today's video. So if this resonates with you, then please do stay tuned. Before I get going though, my name is Anuska Taylor. I'm an experienced voice coach, Jungian depth coach, and singer-songwriter performer. And my whole philosophy around the voice is your voice is an outer expression of your inner world, meaning your conscious and your unconscious thoughts, feelings, beliefs, judgments, assumptions that you made about yourself and the world. And it's all being revealed through your voice in all your interactions. So if you want a deeper approach, if you want to create lasting transformation with your voice, you have to go within. It's not enough to do vocal exercises. Otherwise, you'll find you take one step forward and two steps back. So if you want to learn more about my deeper, more transformational approach to voice coaching, check out the links below. There are many ways I can support you, from online courses through to my digital voice coach offering. You can also book a one-off 1-hour session through to my signature 8-month private voice coaching program, Speak with Impact. So let's answer this question first of all with a yes. So yes, it is fake to change your voice. Now, why might I say that? And why might you also think that? Well, from my perspective, when we are changing our voice from a place of ego, which is a place of fear, which is a place of scarcity and lack and survival, yes, it is fake. So how might this show up? So for example, you might want to completely change your accent because you fear that people won't take you seriously, that they won't listen to you, that you're not professional enough, that you're not going to be successful enough or validated or adored or liked or loved. So all of that is ego. All of that is about the ego wanting to create a new social mask, a new persona, so that you feel validated, safe, loved, accepted in the world. Now, we all do this to some extent, but here I'm talking when you're really trying to completely change your voice. So let me just give you a quick example of this. So a few years ago, a lady contacted me and asked me if I could help her to sound like Kate Middleton, so Princess of Wales, Kate, Catherine, whatever you want to call her. And she really believed that that accent would make her feel more professional and more successful. So I had to say to her, look, that's not what I do. You need to work with a dialect coach. If you actually just want to change your accent completely, I'm not the coach for you. Dialect coaches, that's what they do. And actors and actresses work with them all the time to prepare for roles where they need a completely different accent. To me, that is fake. That is not who you are. That was not who she was. And it was really about her trying to fit in, trying to be liked, trying to feel more successful, more professional. And as I say, to some extent, we all do that. But when it's taken to an extreme, you know the ego is really running the show. And when the ego is running the show, you are moving further and further and further away from your truest, most authentic voice. And the voice is just never going to function freely, effortlessly, powerfully from that place. But let me give you another example which might resonate with more of you, and certainly I've fallen into this myself, is we feel like we have to have a telephone voice or a professional voice. So we have our interview voice or our telephone voice when in the days when you used to actually have a landline. And I always remember my mum would put on a completely different voice when she answered the phone. And I always used to laugh at her because I'm like, you don't speak like that. But we all sort of, again, do that to some extent, but some people do it more than others. Some people, they literally change their voice because they want to be perceived to be more intelligent or more authoritative or more professional, fill in the blank. So if you're changing your voice to try and be liked, to try and fit in, to try and feel more professional, feel more confident, but it's being driven by fear, then that is fake. Because as I say, you're getting further and further away from your true voice. And your true voice, from my perspective, regardless of accent, so this is really important, I'm never about changing an accent What I am about, though, is making your voice clearer, more free, more open, more powerful, more generous, and more expressive, which I believe is available to all accents. Because actually, if your accent is very thick and the only people that understand you are your family and the people in your village, it's going to be very, very limiting in terms of how you can communicate and connect with people beyond your immediate community. And for me, the whole reason for doing voice coaching and the whole reason for doing all of this kind of work is to actually connect with other human beings, is to build deeper relationships, deeper connections, and communicate more fully and more authentically. That is the purpose for me, whether it's personally or professionally. So we want to bring the truest version of ourselves to the table. And that means people actually have to be able to understand us, but also we're not trying to change our essence. We're not trying to change who we are at our core. So they're just a couple of examples of where I would say it is fake to change your voice, because they are driven from ego, they are driven from fear, they're driven from lack, they're driven from a place of defensiveness. And I'm not enough, I'm not okay if I don't change my voice to fit in, to be accepted, to be validated, to be loved. As I say, we all do this to some extent, but it's when you take it to an extreme that it becomes an issue. So you really have to check in with yourself and ask yourself very honestly, when you're thinking about doing voice work, what is the real reason I'm doing this? Is this driven from fear and scarcity and lack and defensiveness? Or is this driven from a true desire to actually connect and communicate more fully, more authentically, more deeply with people? Because that's where you want to go. So let's answer this question now with a no. No, it's not fake to change your voice. So coming back to my original point, it actually depends on what you mean by your voice. If you really believe that your voice is who you are, then yes, it will feel fake. But in my experience, when there are limitations with people in their voice, that is not who they really are. They are conditioned, programmed habits that they've picked up from childhood, from their upbringing, from their religion, from what they've been taught at school, from their peers, from the media, and even sometimes it's been passed down through generations before, that this is how you should speak, this is how you should use your voice, this is socially acceptable, this isn't. So from this perspective, then, your voice right now isn't even your true voice. This is your habitual voice. This is your conditioned, your programmed voice. And so that isn't who you are. That is just the ego trying to protect you using your voice as a kind of defense mechanism. Now, again, we all do this to some extent, but when it's really driving us and we find it really hard to transcend those limiting patterns, then we know the ego really has its hooks in. So your voice will be a product of your upbringing, your conditioning. So how might this show up? And I have talked about this on other videos, but just to give you some quick examples. So maybe as a little girl growing up in a home, you were taught that little girls should be seen and not heard. So you learned to shut your voice down. Maybe you were a little boy growing up in a home that you were taught boys don't cry, boys don't show emotion. So you learned to shut the emotion down in your voice. And you might find that your voice is very monotonous and lacks energy and lacks expression and lacks passion. So there's just a couple of examples, kind of gender specific examples, but it could also be things like maybe you grew up in a home where there was a lot of fighting, a lot of shouting, a lot of arguing, and you might have decided that this is actually how people communicate. So if I can't beat them, join them. So now I'm going to become someone that kind of shouts and screams at everyone. Or you might have gone the other way and thought, I hate this conflict. I am never going to express anger like that. And I see this a lot, particularly with women. So they shut that part of their voice down. They don't allow themselves to be passionate and express themselves, and they become the ultimate people pleaser. It could also be things like you've been told you were too quiet. You need to speak up more. What's wrong with you? Why aren't you saying anything? Or you're too loud. You talk too much. What's wrong with you? Stop talking. All of this is all feeding into how you use your voice. What you have learnt is safe and what's not safe. So hopefully you're starting to see then your current voice is really just a product of all of this conditioning. It isn't who you really are. Therefore, it's not really your voice. Your true voice is free, it's open, it's powerful, it's expressive, and you have a conscious choice with how you use your voice in different situations. So something I hear a lot from people, and literally someone said this to me the other week, is they feel like they can speak confidently in certain situations, but not in other situations. And what happens is, even if you feel, say, at work, you can speak confidently, but with your loved ones, you feel like you can't express vulnerable emotions, you're still being driven by that conditioning. You are still micromanaging your voice. You're still not actually free. And so, what you actually really need to do is look at the emotion that's driving those habits, driving those patterns. Why don't you feel it's safe to express yourself? Or why do you feel it's okay to maybe be loud and maybe shout at people or fill in the blank? So, this is going to look completely different for every single person because even if you're brought up in the same home, the way you perceive situations is going to be completely different. And I'm one of three, I'm the youngest of three. And even I look at my siblings and how we use our voices. We were brought up by the same parents, we had a similar education, and yet we all use our voices quite differently because it's more about your perception of the situation than the actual situation. So, coming back to the whole fighting, if you grew up in a home where your parents were fighting and arguing and shouting and screaming at each other, you might have learned, well, that's how you do relationships. That's how you communicate in relationships. You scream and shout to get your own way. You talk over people. Or, like me, when you witnessed that growing up, which I did, lots of fighting between my parents, I learned and I decided, and again, this isn't a conscious thing, this is happening unconsciously. I don't like this. I don't want to be like that. So I became the ultimate people pleaser and I just never expressed myself. Or I'd only express myself if I thought other people might agree with me. But if there was any chance that other people wouldn't agree, I tended to shut my voice down. And that's what we do. So we're not free. This is the thing. Whether you're the person that screams and shouts at people, or whether you're the person that's very quiet and shuts down and runs away, you're not free. You're just operating from conditioning. So the whole point really is if there's any limitations or the voice is blocked or hidden or retracting, you know it's the conditioning and programming running the show, which means it's not your voice. So therefore, it's not fake to change your voice because all you're doing is you're getting out of your own way, you're reclaiming your authentic voice, and you're allowing that true voice to emerge and to be expressed. And that's going to look different in different situations. But importantly, you're consciously choosing how you show up. You're not operating from that conditioning. Well, I can express myself fully in this situation, but I can't express myself fully in that situation. That's not safe, but that one is. So you can see how the conditioning starts to drive the voice. And so you end up micromanaging your voice. It's exhausting, it's emotionally exhausting, it's physically exhausting, and you're just not free. So this is the essence of my work. It's to free you from within. And then when you do the physical voice training, the voice is going to work so much better. Also, just as one final point to make in terms of the conditioning and the programming, this can be explicitly told to you, Anuska, stop talking, you talk too much, or it can be implied, it can be implicit. So there might be talk in your family or where you grew up. There's a lot of judgment around people that talk too much. So it's implied we don't like people that talk too much. It's never said, Anuska, you talk too much, but it's implied in the judgments and the conversations your family have around people. So it can be both implicit and explicit. But as I say, most of the time, we're not even conscious that we've absorbed these messages. These are happening in our very early years as very young children. And we start speaking as babies, basically, as babbling words. So we're absorbing all of these messages implicitly, explicitly. And so by the time we get to adulthood, our voice is so conditioned and so programmed. We're like a fish in water. We don't even realize we're swimming, using the fish analogy, in the conditioning. But if your voice is limited, hindered, blocked, restricted, restrained, pulled into your throat, you know the conditioning is driving it because your true voice is open, free, powerful, generous and expressive, regardless of accent. So if I can help you in any way, please do feel free to book a 1 hour session if you want to see what it's about. But this really is a personal transformation, first and foremost, and the voice follows, and you just show up completely differently in life. So thank you so much. I'd love to know your comments. If you enjoyed today's video, then please do like, comment, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you on next week's video.